What is going on, you guys? Welcome to the training module. This is module 3, and the first part of this module is going to be a video on training and the importance of it. So I'm going to break down why training structure in the gym is so essential. I'm going to touch on quite a few topics, and I'm going to go into the upcoming videos breaking this down even more. So with module 3, we're going to be talking about the importance of training structure. I'm going to be briefly touching upon progression, adaptation, proper recovery, energy reserves, RPE, which you'll hear more about in future videos, preventing overtraining and joint pain, strength and strategy, and efficiency, and your new baseline threshold. So these are things I'm going to speak on. But I say all that to say, if you don't understand what any of this means, I'm giving you a brief overview of it, and then as we go into the upcoming videos, I'm going to dive a bit deeper. We're also going to touch briefly on tempo, tension, time under tension. So let's get right into the video. So I'm going to share my screen, open up a whiteboard, and then this way you guys can see a visual of what we're working with. So again, this video is the first of the training module, and this video is on the importance of training structure. So I'm just going to, at the top with my neat handwriting, write the word structure, and boom. So underneath structure, we have a lot of different factors that play a role. The first one we're going to look at is progression. Just bear with me on this. So we have progression, right? So in a nutshell, what progression is making sure that you're getting stronger, your body's adapting properly. Most of you don't know that. I'm sorry, most of you do know this, I hope. But if you don't, then I'm going to break it down briefly for you. So progression is basically when you're in the gym, the response that your muscles take from the resistance of the exercises you're using, be it the weights, the repetitions, the amount of sets, the amount of volume, the amount of time that target muscle is under tension. All of these things contribute to new adaptation, which leads to new muscle growth. And so as your body becomes more adapted to these things, it's going to require more and more and more to get the same amount of response, or in scientific terms, stimuli. And I'm trying to keep this very entry level for you guys. I know there are some of you in this program that do understand this at a conceptual and more of a in-depth level, but I know there are also people in this program that don't know all the ins and outs of the anatomical and science and everything behind it, which I know you don't need all that. You really want the results, right? So this is why I'm going surface level. So just bear with me. If this is very easy for you to comprehend, then just go through it. It's going to be helpful having a sense of knowing just a brief reminder of what these things are, and then we'll go into more depth as the videos come up. So when it comes to the progression, right, the reason, again, that we want to progress is just to make sure that what we're doing on Wednesday is more challenging on the body compared to what we did on Monday, right? Because on Monday we did, say, our first ever workout, and then Wednesday, just as an example, Wednesday you need more than that, right? And then Friday you need even more than Wednesday, right? So it's this constant cycle where your body adapts and your body gets used to these stressors. So your body is trying to, respond and, make it so that it's not as challenging next time. The downfall to that is, you're not going to get the same amount of muscle growth if you're doing the same amount of weight, the same amount of repetitions, etc., etc., etc. So this is why you want to train more intensely. You want to optimize your rest time. You want to use more time under tension. You want to do more volume, which is just volume is made up of just more repetitions and more sets, and more exercises throughout the workout. There are a lot of other things that I want to touch on, but the main reason that you need to progress is so that your body can adapt more and more week over week and continue to get better and better progress. You also want to use progression, so that your body can properly recover, so you don't run into things like joint pain or overtraining or any sort of discomfort that's prolonged. If you have some muscle soreness, that's super normal. But most of you probably have noticed after the first couple of weeks of getting into a routine with the gym unless you're going way above and beyond, your body doesn't feel super sore anymore. And that's just because it's adapted, right? So you want to still almost aim for that, sore feeling so that your body is actually getting stronger. And if you don't feel super sore all the time, it's not a bad thing, because muscle soreness is not directly linked and correlated with, adaptation. And there's a lot of studies behind this, so I'm not going to go super in depth. But like, if you're not feeling sore, that's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean that you're not making progress. And that's a question I get all the time. However, you do still want to aim for that, because it is one of the variables that leads to new adaptation, and new adaptation is just more muscle growth. And the same thing with fat loss, right? Like, if you're aiming for fat loss and you're in this program, then the adaptation is going to allow you to, pair with the proper nutrition, make sure you expedite that process, and you get better results, right? It's just more of a stress response, and the muscle growth and the fat loss are just different, responses that eliciting that stress on your body endures, right? So that just means that, like, hey, the more you do, the more that your body adapts to. But also, if you do more than what it's capable of currently, then it's going to make better progress. And I'm pretty sure all of you in this program want better progress, faster, better results, without all the mumbo jumbo of the science. Some of you might want to know these things, but I'm just going to briefly touch on them and move on next. Right. So we have progression, which again is weight, repetitions, sets, which are, factored into the volume, as well as exercises and how many you're doing. Also the tempo, which is just how slow or explosive or fast you're going with the exercises, and then your time under tension, which is how much tension is on the muscle. So, like, example of the time under tension would be you're doing a biceps curl and you're going 5 seconds on the way up because it's so heavy, or because you're slowing it down intentionally, 5 seconds on the way down, would be 5 second lower, right? And so, in case I touch on this and use this word in the upcoming part of the video and you don't understand it, or next modules, we have a concentric motion, which is when you're contracting the muscle, which is not always the upward portion, but sometimes it is. With a biceps curl, it's the upward part. But with other exercises, it might be the downward part. It's really when you're contracting the muscle and you're squeezing the muscle, right? The eccentric is when you're lowering the exercise and you're stretching and lengthening that muscle out. Both of these are important and necessary to build the most amount of muscle mass, and each muscle is going to respond differently. So you have the concentric and the eccentric. Now, the longer each of those are in duration, how much time you have, that just is going to increase the amount of tension on the muscle, and that's another factor that leads to your body progressing. Now I'm going to move on from that, right? We also have the adaptation, right? So, like, if you've been training for 5 or 10 years, you're going to need to do a lot more in the gym and train a lot more strategically than somebody that's only been in the gym for 2 or 3 years, right? And somebody that's been in the gym 2 or 3 years is going to have to train a lot harder to make the same amount of progress as somebody that's been in the gym for 2 weeks, right? And that's why, if you've ever gone to the gym and you realize that, like, your first couple of weeks or couple of months you made a lot of progress, part of that is the fact that your body is not used to any resistance training. And so as soon as you give it even the smallest, slightest degree of stimuli or resistance, it's going to make a rapid response. And this is why, as you get, more consistent in the gym, you've been doing it for 10, 12, 15 years, myself, it's going to take a lot more for you to still build the same amount of muscle. Not to say you can't maintain that muscle, but you're not going to make those rapid jumps in terms of muscle growth or fat loss. Fat loss is a little different because it's a lot more on the nutritional side of things, but you're not going to make these rapid jumps overnight if you've been in the gym 10, 15, 20 years. Most of you guys are, on the newer side. You've been working out maybe 5 to 8 years, maybe a little bit less. Some of you guys in here are beginners, but nonetheless, as you get more advanced and you've done this for longer, it's really, really important to prioritize training structure, because you want to be able to increase all these variables and get the most from your workouts so that you can get the most response, build the most muscle, lose the most amount of weight, etc., etc., etc. So on to the next part is recovery, right? As your body recovers more and more from, like, as your body adapts, you can also recover from a lot more. And that means that you can get away with doing a lot more volume in the gym. Now, on the flip side, you want to make sure that you don't overtrain, because as you build up new muscle mass, as you get stronger, as it seems contradictory, but your body needs to recover more because yes, it needs more to build more, but also because there's more muscle in your body, because you're stronger, your recovery process also needs to increase to allow you to adapt and properly, recover, right? So for those of you guys that are not aware, you're not actually building muscle tissue when you're in the gym. When you're in the gym, you're, tearing muscle fibers, these micro tears, and there's a lot of the science that goes into it. I'm just going to briefly touch on it. You're going into the gym and you're basically tearing these muscle fibers down, which means that you're just exhausting them. You're putting them under stress. That's why you might have that pumped up feeling or a lot of blood flow. You're just sending a ton of circulation of blood into that muscle. When you go home and you go to bed at night and you get in your nice cozy bed and you sleep, that is when your body is actually adapting and building new muscle, right? It's going under the process of recovery, which is where you build new muscle mass. And so it's only able to do that if it can recover properly and if it has the right amount of nutrients that it can derive into your bloodstream. So that being said, you need to keep in mind with proper recovery two things. A is energy reserves. So how much energy you have available throughout the entire week, from workout 1 to workout 4 or 5, however many workouts you do in a week. Or some of you guys might only do 2 workouts a week. And the other thing is B, RPE, which I'm going to touch on in more depth. RPE is rate of perceived exertion, which is how difficult the exercise is, how challenging it is on your body. Now, we've talked about progression, we've talked about adaptation, we've talked about proper recovery, which includes energy reserves and RPE. The next thing I want to touch on is preventing overtraining and joint pain, which is what I briefly mentioned just a minute ago. But the overtraining part is okay, like as you get stronger, you also need to recover more and for longer to prevent you having a ton of muscle soreness. And you also, and this is just from a fact of, the more mass you have on your body, the more strength you have, the more exhausted those muscles are going to be from the same stimuli, even if you're keeping it the same. So even if you're not progressing, which again, like I'm saying, we need to progress if we want to continue building, but even if you're not progressing, hypothetically speaking, just to do the same workout, because you're stronger than you were in the past, you also need a lot more recovery to make sure that you keep your baseline in there and you don't, under recover, right? Now, you also want to make sure that joint pain is something that does not pop up. I've dealt with a lot of joint pain myself, and joint pain, really, what it is it's making sure that you don't have joints, tendons, really any part of your body that feels uncomfortable, right? When you're doing an exercise and you have a rotator cuff issue, or your shoulders feeling weird, or you have your knee bothering you, you have your feet, your ankles, your calf, your lower back, your hips, anything, bro. Anything that does not feel normal, that usually is joint pain, but not always. There's times where we're putting stress on more of the tendons or more of the ligaments, and maybe those things are minor and they might build up. You, of course, want to prevent these things, and this is why it's so important, right? But for the most part, I think all of you guys in here, know what it feels like to have a pump, right? Or like the muscular blood flow, the circulation, the feeling of your muscles being stimulated. And it's a good feeling. Typically, it might burn for a little bit, but it's not like discomfort usually. It's just, that short-term pain, right? Which is, I don't even like to use the word pain, but it's a good thing, right? And most of you, like I'm confident every single one of you knows what I'm talking about when I say that. Like the pump itself and like being in the gym is great. What's not great is having joint pain, having something where it may act up later on, or you leave the gym, or you're in the gym and like something just feels off. That's what we want to prevent, is the joint pain and the overtraining, so you can recover properly. Now, the final thing I want to touch on before I wrap this video up is strength, strategy, and efficiency, right? So I have some of you guys in here that are strength athletes, which means A, you're either training for competition, or you're somebody that really cares more about the weight on the exercises as opposed to how your physique looks. And so what that means is when you're doing something like a compound lift, like a squat, a deadlift, a bench press, etc., you don't care as much about enlarging that muscle group, the target muscle, as much as you do lifting heavier weights. So some of you guys in here are trying to squat 2, 3, 400, maybe even 500 pounds. Some of you guys in here are trying to deadlift 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe even 600 pounds, right? So you guys are trying to lift a lot of weight, and that's more of a strength focused goal. So that's not going to directly be correlated to the most amount of hypertrophy, which is gaining lean muscle mass and, in a nutshell, improving your physique. And so because of that, when you guys are, for those of you in this chat that are, a strength athlete, or that is a bigger goal to you, you need to even more so keep in mind how important progression is, because if you don't factor this in, then it's going to be very, very challenging to actually optimize your strength numbers and week over week, week over week, week over week, get into the results that you want. The next thing after strength is strategy, right? So I've touched on how your body is going to adapt as you get more accustomed to training, but also strategy is more important because as that baseline for what your body needs to actually adapt, as that increases, you need to have a better strategy so you can still make the same amount of results, if not better results. I think all of you guys watching, like I just said a few minutes ago, you guys want better results faster. That's, I think, why you're in this program. So strategy is super important, which just means what type of strategy are you using? Are you trained to be, somebody that has bigger biceps, right? Are you somebody that's training to have bigger quads? Are you trying to have bigger calves? Are you, running for half marathons, ultra marathons, right? Are you guys training, to be able to just have a heavier bench press, squat more weight on the bar? I know you're all slightly different, right? And even some of you guys in here are trying to lose like 30 pounds of body fat, 40 pounds of body fat. So the strategy that you have for your specific goal is a lot different than, the strategy that the person next to you might have. And most of you guys in here have similar goals, right? But what I will say is, depending on the specific individual in this program, we're all going to have different strategies that we need. And so this is why it's so crucial. And this is why you need to program, or I should say follow the program, properly, right? So fortunately, you guys don't have to worry about that. You just follow the program, just do the thing. But for questions around why do I need a program? This is why. And this is also why I want you guys to understand this, because my final pillar of my program, there are 6 pillars of my program. Final one is intuitive implementation, which means that by the end of this program, I want you guys to be able to have the ability, if you choose to do this on your own and not have to worry about not knowing what to do. I know a lot of you guys have been working with me for a while, and you want to be able to just continue progressing. And so you want to expedite the process, work with a coach that's done this with so many people, and you want to be able to just get the results. And so you don't want to have to worry about programming. And I know that's why a lot of you guys are in my program, right? But it's, these pillars are going to be frameworks around how I program for you guys. So if you're a fat loss client and, you still, of course, want to build muscle if you're in here, but if more your focus is fat loss, then the strategy you have is going to be a lot different than the strategy of somebody that's a runner or somebody that's trying to pack on 30 pounds of muscle, right? So that is, why strategy is so important. And efficiency is crucial, because this is similar to strategy, but really the main difference is just with efficiency, it's okay, how much time are you spending in the gym? Most of you guys are career busy men, you have jobs, you have things going on, and you don't have time to be spending 3, 4, 5. I grew up spending a ton of time in the gym because I loved it, but you guys don't have that much time to be spending 3, 4, 5 hours a day in the gym, and nor do you need to, or nor does your body need that much. But if you don't know what you're doing, if you don't have efficiency, then you will be spending a lot of time in the gym. Even if it's only an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, we need to expedite the process for the point of you want to get in and out. But also, even if you are somebody that, I know there are people in this program that love training more than anything else, and almost as much as I do. I don't think you have me beat. Otherwise, you would be doing your own coaching. I love training more than anything else in the world. Next best, maybe not as much as a couple of my clients, but I love training. And so for me with efficiency, I want to be able to get the most amount of bang for my buck. I want to be able to get the most amount of training and the least amount of downfalls, right? I want to be able to get the most for the time I'm putting into the gym. And the analogy I like to use with this, which hopefully this makes all of you guys laugh, I want to be able to squeeze every freaking drop from the lemon before moving on to the next lemons, right? So imagine you have a bowl of lemons on your kitchen table. This is the one analogy I just need to make. I think it makes sense for you guys. And this is a while back, and I think it helps put things in perspective. Imagine on your kitchen table, you have a bowl of 10 lemons, and you have 9 of them just chilling in the bowl. You take one of them out, right? So you have 9 left, and you cut open the lemon, right? And you squeeze one half of the lemon. You have the other half of the lemon you squeeze out, right? You have a couple drops left of the juice of the lemon. And, instead of going to grab that 9th lemon and just working your way through, you want to get every last drop from that first lemon before you move to the next, right? It's like if you guys have a gallon of milk in the fridge, before you just throw the milk away, you want to make sure you use all the rest of the first gallon or carton, right? And so like with the lemon analogy, you want to get every last drop from that lemon. And so the reason I use that is like, you want to be the most efficient as possible, right? So if you're using a weight and your form's not optimal and ideal, and you're swinging the weight, you're not using enough time under tension, you're not slowing down the eccentric or the lowering portion, you're not squeezing hard enough and getting enough blood flow in that contractile tissue at the top, which just means like flexing the muscle. If you're not doing everything, like you can't really be perfect as anything in life, I don't think. But if you're not getting close to that point and really maximizing everything first, then there's no point in, trying to take the next lemon out of the bowl, if that makes sense, right? Like you want to make sure that before you move to that next exercise or that new weight or that more advanced technique or that, I don't know, the more advanced exercise training style, you want to make sure that what you're doing, you're getting the most from, and you really have a good grasp on it first. Because if you don't, you try to skip steps, you run into joint pain, you run into discomfort, you run into injuries, and most importantly, you leave a lot of gains on the table. Just like you're leaving those lemons on the table, you're leaving gains on the table and progress results on the table. So that's what I want you guys to get from this is efficiency. In addition to the strategy, the strength, and everything else, the efficiency is I want you to get the most amount of progress from this program. And in order to do that, you have to get the most amount of, progress from each. You want to squeeze every last juice, every last drop of the lemon from each exercise, from each set, from each repetition, etc., etc., etc. And the last thing I want to just briefly touch on is your adaptation threshold. So you have this adaptation threshold, which basically think of, and my plan was to actually write all this out on the whiteboard, but I don't need to write much more out. I think it's easier that I just do it that way. But basically, this is your threshold, right? Think about this as like building muscle, right? After like 5 years, for example, let's say this is a chart, right? So like this here is like years. Don't mind my bad Y, right? So like years, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then let's call it 10. We'll skip a couple steps, right? So we have like 10 years of training in the gym, right? Now, you also have frequency at the bottom here. Okay, so maybe I could, instead of doing the Y, I could have called it duration. But like here you have frequency, like how often you're going to the gym. Some of you guys are going in, twice a week. Some of you guys are going in 3 times a week. Some of you guys are going in 4 times a week, right? So here we go, right? So we've been working out for a year and we've been going to the gym 3 times a week, right? So we're going to plot right here. Boom. That's that baseline threshold. So basically what that means is, we've been going to the gym 3 times a week for a year. We need to continue going to the gym 3 times a week, moving into the second year of training. And even then, we're not going to make the same amount of progress. And it's going to be tough to even maintain that unless we do more, because our body's trying to make it easier. Your body basically is trying to get to a point where it's not challenging, because your body doesn't want this pain, this discomfort. It thinks it's in danger, right? And so it wants to adapt to these things. So now the goal is to, adjust the variables, meaning with the progression, you're using heavier weight, you're using more reps, more sets, more exercises, so your volume increases, your tempo or the tension that you're putting on the target muscle is increased, right? So slower tempo, maybe a more explosive power tempo, right? A bunch of different things, right? Optimal rest time, maybe you're supersetting. There are so many ways to do this, right? There are so many different variables, but you need to do more, at least one of them, to at least maintain, if not have more progress. And like I said, you guys all want more progress, right? So like, okay, now in year 2, for example, now say year 2, we're doing 4 days a week, right? And let's say like you guys are upwards of like 7 days a week in the gym. And like, I don't think most of you guys don't need 7 days a week. A lot of you guys can get by with like 4 or 5. Like I said, most of you guys I speak with, you don't need to be really doing more than 5. Even 6 is really pushing it because you want to recover. But there are ways to progress where you're not overtraining and you're not doing a ton all 7 days, right? So like I've been to the gym myself for 30 straight days, which probably seems insane, but a lot of those days were like I was doing active recovery work days, and you know, I'm able to progress, so I'm able to go to the gym a lot. But I know most of you guys don't want to do that, and you just want the results. And even if you do want to do that, you don't need to, right? And you probably are better off doing less days in the gym, but more efficiently, more intensely, right? With more volume, etc. But let's just, on a hypothetical perspective, to be able to show this math and show how it works, is continue moving, right? So like, okay, you know, year 1, you're doing 3 days a week, right here. And then year 2, you know, you're doing 4 days a week. Year 5, you're doing, you know, 5 days a week, right? And then like year 10, for example, you're doing maybe 7 days a week. And again, maybe from those 7 days, 4 or 5 of them are like hard training days. The other 3 days are, you know, maybe more cardio or active recovery days or mobility days, so that you can optimize your performance and be more efficient. Like I mentioned, is so crucial. But eventually, bro, you're getting to a point where you are here, your adaptation, let's just put like an A, D there for I should just put an A, but like adaptation there, right? This is your adaptation. The stimuli or the response you got from year 1 is much greater than it is going to be now at year 10, right? So like where you're at now at year 10, you have to do so much more to really get the same response. That's why efficiency is so crucial, because as you get up the chart here, although it's an upward chart, it's going to be more difficult to make the same amount of progress. You have to do more and you're getting less and less return, right? You have like diminishing return for the more you do. So this is why efficiency is so important. And this is why at the beginning of, you know, a lot of people's lifting journeys, they can get away with doing bad form and they can eat junk food and still work out. And like, I grew up with people that, like, even myself in the past, like when I was like super young working out, I would like eat fast food and stuff. And that's how am I still building muscle? It's just because like your body went from doing no training to doing something. And now it's at a point where it's like, okay, now my nutrition really has to be on point to make sure that I stay where I want to be. It's not just age or metabolism shutting down. It's usually neither of that. Like there's some truth to that. But usually like as you go up this curve here, you need to be a lot more efficient with not just nutrition, training, but everything, right? So recovery, everything like that, right? Hormones being optimized. So that being said, that is in a nutshell structure, right? So boom. And don't mind this messy writing. I can't fit everything here, but that's really it. Structure in a nutshell. I will see you guys in the next module. The next video from this specific module is going to be breaking down this a bit more in depth. These are going to be shorter clips. I know this one was on the lengthier side, but the next, one we're going to talk on is just training phases. So like why and how, now that you have a grasp over structure, how to use proper training phases. And you guys probably noticed like you have phase 1 and then phase 2. Some of them are 4-week phases. Some of them are 6. Some of them are 8 weeks. Some of them are, 12-week phases. It all varies on the goal and the overall duration. But because we have structure, I'm not going to give you one program to follow for the rest of your life. And even more so, I'm not going to give you one program just to follow for like 6 months. Like you need different phases so that you continue progressing. So now I think you should have a very good grasp over all of this. And in the next video of this module, we're going to go into the importance of training phases. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Hopefully this all made sense.